There are many planes out there that have failed the test of time and got power creeped into irrelevance in War Thunder. Planes that are known for their big engines and 2 radar missiles. A plane that Gaijin kept adding to a bunch of trees even when they didn't need it. And thank goodness the F-16 isn't one of them. I was talking about this piece of shit. So without further ado, here is the MiG-29 meme guide again. The Mikoyan Gurevich MiG-29 is a 4th generation frontline fighter interceptor at the top ranks of the Soviet tech tree that lives on today as an example of why Red 4 can't have nice things. From artificially nerfed flight models, loadouts, avionics, and other stupid balancing measures from Gaijin, the MiG-29 is an absolutely interesting plane to play in the skies of War Thunder today, and not in a good way. So whether you just unlocked your first MiG-29 and are looking at how to play it, or you are an old-time connoisseur of exquisite cock and ball torture, then lock in, because this shitbrick is going to make you lose your last remaining brain cells. After the certified bra moment known as the Vietnam War and watching the fat missile bus doctrine planes get their balls tickled by outdated and supposedly inferior dogfighters, the US wasn't the only one to realize, oh shit, we done fucked up with their latest designs. So just like the US, the USSR also jump-started 2 next-generation fighter projects that focused on maneuverability and modern avionics, instead of just being missile buses. One of these fighters, the Perspektivny Lyoki Frontyowy Istribitel, or Advanced Lightweight Frontline Fighter, meant to match the F-16's role, was quickly brought up on the drawing board, and the initial design for this F-16 competitor was going to be a unique, clean sheet design by the Soviets to fit their own requirements and differentiate itself from the pesky American F-16. So, for this completely unique design, the Soviets came up with... Dude, that's just a fucking F-16. Anyways, the F-16 didn't really fit the Soviets' requirements. They wanted to put in 2 engines instead of 1. Bigger engines, bigger radar, bigger weapons, and bigger wings. As a result, this new fighter, now titled Izdelye 9, or Project 9, would see a variety of different designs being pitched around by the Mikoyan Design Bureau. Now you see, unlike the Americans who used blocks to differentiate different models of the same family, blocks were obviously only for Tetris, and the Soviets instead used shitty and confusing decimal numbers to tell apart versions, like an amateur game developer putting out his first Unity slopware game on itch.io. There was designs 9.1, 9.2, 9.3, and so on until 9.11, which all ranged from interesting to downright retarded to what the actual fuck am I even looking at anymore. Anyways, just like George Bush, the Mikoyan Design Bureau decided that all of the fun stuff comes after 9/11, since design number 9.12 was this thing. Looks familiar? Yeah, this is basically the MiG-29 as we know it. This design was deemed good enough for all requirements and was greenlit into production, but only after a few other upgrades. First of all, the new N019 radar was fitted, causing the nose of the production model to be slightly bulgier than this original prototype. Second, and most important of all upgrades, was the new Soviet kill-on-sight doctrine. This doctrine involved 3 new primary systems. The first was the ZSH-5 Shell 3UM helmet-mounted targeting system, allowing the pilot to target enemies by simply looking in their direction. But target them with what, you may be asking? And this is where the 2 other systems come in. The first was a special mode on the N019 Rubin radar that allowed the radar and the IRST bore sights to be slewed and traversed to wherever the pilot was looking, giving unprecedented off-bore capability in a dogfight. The second and most important system was the gunnery missile, or simply a missile to replace guns. This missile was to have incredible high off-bore targeting, thrust vectoring vanes for insane maneuverability even at low speeds and knife fight ranges, infrared countermeasure flare resistance, or IRCCM for short, and most importantly, compatibility with the Shell 3UM helmet-mounted targeting system, allowing the pilot to quite literally slave the missile seeker to wherever he was looking without a radar or IRST lock. Looks can literally kill in this case. This new and unprecedented capability in a dogfight would scare NATO shitless after mock dogfights against German MiG-29s after the German reunification, directly resulting in the accelerated development of missile systems like the AIM-132 ASRAAM, various other Western HMD sets, a good 20 years after the Soviet equivalent first entered service. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Back to the MiG-29 prototypes, the 9.12 model incorporated various other innovations which were very new for their time. And by that, I don't just mean the technology they stole from the American planes, like the lifting, blended body. They actually had some unique and seemingly weird technology for the time not stolen from the Americans, such as rough field diverters that close your intake during takeoff and landing, and misaligned engines that look funny from the top. For now, let's get started on this early MiG-29 9.12 model in War Thunder. The MiG-29's early models can best be divided into 2 subcategories in-game. Referring by the shitty decimal numbers from earlier, these would be Airframe Model 9.12 and 9.13. Both of these exist in-game, with 9.12 being available in the German and Italian tech trees as the East German and the Hungarian MiG-29, while the 9.13 is available as the Soviet tech tree MiG-29. The only difference between the 2 models is the slight hump behind the canopy, which is noticeably fatter on the 9.13. This is because there was a bit of extra fuel or avionics in there depending on the model. In-game, this makes almost no difference. Like, yeah, the lighter 9.12 that Germany and Hungary get are better at dogfighting than the Soviet one, obviously due to being lighter, but the actual difference is so small that you will basically never notice it unless you go into a very long and extended dogfight against the other MiG-29 model. So, people who still preach that the Soviet one is quote-unquote worse are not wrong, but also very stupid because it makes no difference in gameplay. Besides that one tiny difference, these Fulcrums are literally the same. So let's talk about how these things play in-game now. At 12.7, these MiG-29s are in quite the peculiar spot, further jeopardized by how horribly gaijin balances jets at this tier. I don't know how to describe this. They're fun, but they're not really good planes objectively. Now, I'm going to go on a little rant about how gaijin absolutely cannot cook, so please bear with me. The MiG-29 in-game gets the R-27ER, the single best semi-active radar homing missile in-game. The issue is, it shouldn't. These early MiG-29s were not compatible with the ER without avionics upgrade into the MiG-29S model, and only carried the normal R-27R. Or, in the case of the German one, it straight up never had the R-27ER because the R-27ER and ET were never exported to Germany. Germany suffers or something. You know what they did have in real life that gaijin didn't give them in-game? The R-73! You know, the missile designed specifically alongside this plane, Adding a MiG-29 without its signature R73 is like adding a Tomcat without its signature AIM-54 Phoenixes. Anyways, so on release you had this plane that was quite a nice equivalent to the F-16A. It didn't have the R-27ER back then. So, on paper, it had much worse avionics than the F-16 and much worse IR missiles, but it made up for that by having 2 radar missiles, which the F-16A Block 10 doesn't get. Then, when the update dropped, Gaijin for some fucking reason decided to give America a second F-16. This one with radar missiles, basically removing the yin-yang balance between the Fulcrum and the Falcon. So, and in Gaijin's own words, the F-16s were just so much better that the MiG-29 was now irrelevant and players found no point in playing it. Gaijin doesn't know how to balance the game for shit, so instead of, I don't know, up-tiering the F-16 because it was better, or giving the MiG-29 its R-73s, no, they gave the MiG-29 the best radar missile in game by far, a missile that it shouldn't have. And then on top of that, they never gave other countries an equivalent, further cementing the quote-unquote dogfighter into the missile bus gameplay loop. Then, when this plane became the overperforming one because of the new radar missile, Gaijin artificially nerfed its flight model instead of, you know, just up-tiering it, or removing the OP radar missile. Leave it up to the absolute Neanderthalic, double lobotomized, autistic monkeys in the Gaijin development team to create new problems while trying to fix the problems that they created because they refused to fix older problems. Yep, okay, rant over, now time for the facts. Even the US Defense Technological Information Center admitted that the MiG-29 should at least match the F-16 in a dogfight in terms of maneuverability. In-game, the F-16 can dance circles around the MiG-29 at every single flight regime, and it's not even close, because the MiG-29 has the most fictionally nerfed flight model in-game I've seen in a long time. If it was up to me, I'd remove the R-27ER from the MiG-29, and then give it the R-73 instead, and unnerf the flight model and put it up at 13.0, instead of this unfun, fictional slop that Gaijin has done. Okay, enough coping. So how do you play this shitbrick? Gameplay-wise, the MiG-29s have a major shift from previous aircraft in the same line, such as the MiG-21 BIS or the MiG-23 MLD. These aircraft had subpar avionics and missiles and instead relied on their cracked flight performance, at least before it was nerfed right after I made a video on them, to clown on enemy planes. The MiG-29 is the complete opposite of that in terms of gameplay because of Gaijin's horrible balancing decisions, and the shift from a dogfighter to a missile bus catches many players working down the Hungarian, Soviet, or German trees off guard. If you try to dogfight anyone with a functional brain, you'll usually lose, unless it's a Phantom or a Tornado that you're facing. The MiG-29 instead relies on its R-27ERs to do somewhat well, and now, especially with the reduced multipathing altitude, these missiles are very lethal. At least that is if your radar works. This isn't even cope. The shitty Cascarane antenna radar that the Soviets put in this thing is straight ass. The R-27ERs will miss if the enemy knows how to notch, or turns in a direction similar to a notch, or if one of you two turns too hard, or if he farts hard enough, or if the stars aligns, or if he drops a few pops of chaff. Okay, listen. This isn't even bringing up the elephant in the room. You have a shitty radar, alright, and even more dog shit RWR, and only 2 Fox 1s as your radar missiles. Yeah, just 0.3 BR above you, there is an AMRAAM slinger. And at a BR below you, there's a plane with 4 of the objectively best Fox 3s in game. So this dogfighter shoehorned into a BVR missile bus by Gaijin can't even do well at BVR anymore. Further cementing my opinion that Gaijin should just remove the fucking R-27ER from this thing and give it its R-73s and its actual flight model instead. So, compared to planes at your own BR, to reiterate, you get a subpar airframe, the single worst RWR at this BR, a mediocre radar, subpar flight performance, the single worst IR missiles at this BR. But to make up for that, you get 2 of the best Fox 1s in-game, which are made completely irrelevant by the presence of far superior Fox 3s in the same match as you at all times. The Fakor 90 on the Event Tomcat at a lower BR than you literally has more Delta V and range than the R-27ER, so yeah. Very surprisingly, these are still not the worst planes I've played around this BR, and I'd be lying if I told you these MiG-29s are good, but I'd also be lying if I told you that they are bad. I really can't describe this exactly, you just have to play them to know what I mean. The exact analogy I would use to describe these is the standard cart from Mario Kart. You're not exactly good at anything, but you're not exactly bad at anything either. It's this all-rounder, jack of all trades, yet a master of none characteristic that makes these MiG-29s easy to play. And kinda fun. And by fun, I don't mean trolling or ease of mind because they're good. Quite the opposite. It's a challenge trying to get these things to even work in the first place. And that's honestly the fun for it for me. If you're looking for an overpowered plane at this BR where you could just turn off your brain and win instantly, you're looking at the wrong place. The American tech tree is right there. The F-14s and the AV-8B+ will just obliterate anything if you have at least one functional brain cell. Instead, the MiG-29 is a challenging all-rounder that's easy to learn but hard to master, and this reiterates the point that I said earlier when I started this chapter. The MiG-29 is most definitely an interesting aircraft, and for all the wrong reasons. No, I'm not going to say this plane is unplayable or dogshit like some idiots claim it is, because it's not. It's still usable. But I'm also not going to lie and say that it's good or meta like the Redditoids lie it is. Especially not when you have planes that could clown on the MiG-29 in literally every single way at a lower BR, at a higher BR, and at the same BR. All in all, these early MiG-29s need to be nursed into the fight, for the lack of a better term. If you go too aggressive, either in BVR or within visual range, you'll get shit on by far superior planes at the job. You need to be careful and very strategic about what you engage. Knowing your opponent is one of the best tricks in the MiG-29. But of course, everything I just said applies to a perfect world, assuming pilots have equal skill. Luckily for you, pretty much all of the Blue 4 players you'll be facing have zero skill. Look, I mean, come on, there's a reason their jets are so fucking undertiered. And this problem is multiplied tenfold now with the event Tomcat spam. But even with these undertiered Tomcats, they still cannot be saved. Just like Tom Cruise Maverick said in that one hit movie with the F-14 Tomcat, it's not the plane, it's the pilot. So after the MiG-29 9.12 and 9.13, there was about 40 years and hundreds of different variants of development of the MiG-29 family. However, these major upgrades and notable variants are obviously not important because Gaijin jumped straight from an early MiG-29 9.12 straight to the MiG-29 SMT 9.19S from 2006. This will be like going from the F-16A Block 10 straight to the 2006 model F-16C Block 50 with no planes added in between. Yeah, kinda like that. I don't even have to write these jokes anymore. Gaijin just does it for me now, thank you. So, yeah, the MiG-29 SMT is literally just a modern-day Fulcrum. Your shitty cast grain radar has been replaced with an actual planar array radar. Your RWR is fully digital and omnidirectional now, instead of the joke, that is the SPO-15. To further bolster your defensive capability, you get the UV5-08 add-on countermeasure dispenser, giving you almost double the flares of the original MiG-29. You also get access to all kinds of new missiles, such as the R-73 and the R-77 for air-to-air, and not leaving a pound for air-to-ground, you also get the KH-29TD to pop enemy tanks, although I don't know why you ever will in the MiG-29. On top of all of that, you probably noticed the fucking tumor of a humpback fuel tank by now. Yeah, this is the main part of the SMT upgrade, which sought to fix the one problem with the MiG-29, its abysmal range. There is a normal MiG-29 SMT with all the cool upgrades without the gamer neck tumor, but the Soviet aircraft tree is not allowed to have nice tanks, so have the shit brick instead. It's not like we gave an upgrade of MiG-29 to the other tech trees in War Thunder, right? We'll talk about that one later. At least Gaijin gave this shit brick its upgraded engines that it had in real life to cope with the extra weight, right? Oh, no? Anyways, the MiG-29 SMT is so much fatter that you dogfight just slightly better than a slatted Phantom. But your much better and improved new missiles, radar, and RWR completely cement you into the missile bus playstyle. Sadly, at the same exact BR as you can trade just a little of that dogshit maneuverability and the extra flares for more missiles, much better radar missiles, and objectively better radar for even better missile bus playstyle by literally just going to fly the F4F ICE instead. Of course, I wouldn't fly the SMT or the ICE, because the AV-8B Plus gets those same better missiles, the better radar, and on top of that, a great avionics set and a far superior flight model than both of these planes. Also a shitload more countermeasures. All at a lower BR than the SMT and the ICE for some fucking reason? Yeah, the SMT is merely a jester in a court of kings. Just like the original MiG-29, you have to play smart and utilize advantages in the map and in your weapon systems, otherwise you get completely molested by planes that are far superior than you in every way, at a higher BR, at a lower BR, and at the same BR once again. This plane relies on the enemy team being genuinely retarded for you to do well, and that is not fun. A single competent player in an F-15C or an F-16C will completely wipe the floor with the most competent MiG-29 SMT player, with absolutely zero counterplay possible. It's just not fun. I hate the SMT in-game. I haven't coped and seethed about a plane in-game this hard since the Harrier video about 4 months ago. This thing is straight ass. How do you play it? Simple. Step 1. Research the Su-27 flanker at the same BR. You know, this wouldn't be a donut video without gaijin messing something up during production, and yeah, this joke no longer works because the flanker is now at a lower BR than the SMT because of the recent BR changes. So yeah, definitely go grind that instead. Thank you, gaijin. Step 2, go fly that instead. Step 2.5, if you have other tech trees researched like me, don't fly either because the AV-8B Plus is literally better than all of them at a lower BR. And don't worry, if you've never grinded the Team Saunders tech tree, then worry not because Anzio also gets one. Duce really be blowing that budget on everything except real tanks for her team. But if you absolutely must play the MiG-29 SMT and are actually expecting me to teach you how to do it, fine. Just play defensively. You're basically a Phantom with better missiles and avionics in terms of playstyle. Man, if only there was a MiG-29 with just the useful upgrades of the SMT, like the R-73 and the new RWR, without the shitty downgrades of the SMT and at a lower BR. Just imagine, the perfect MiG-29. It would have R-73s, R-27ER, R-27ET, but no R-77, since that's useless anyways, but won't have the fat-ass airframe of the SMT. Just imagine how fun that would be. Right after the reunification of Germany, pretty much all Soviet planes were deemed dog shit and were phased out of service, being either scrapped, sent to evaluation by NATO, or simply sold to other European countries who can't afford NATO jets after the collapse of the USSR. All except one Soviet jet, which was so good in dissimilar mock dogfights against American jets that it not only underwent a special modernization to use NATO radios and IFFs so that the Germans could keep using this jet alongside the NATO counterparts, but more importantly, it scared the West shitless until they made their own equivalents. The story goes that sometime in 1994, at an airbase in Aviano, Italy, American F-16s from the 510th Fighter Squadron were to perform mock dogfights against the reunified German Luftwaffe's MiG-29s during a training exercise. At that point, the F-16 pilots found out the hard way that the MiG-29's insane ability to get nose on target below 100 knots, coupled with its HMD targeting in R-73s, which NATO did not have anything like that at the time, still using AIM-9Ms with no HMD back then, caused the MiG-29s to completely wipe the floor with the F-16s, and it wasn't even close. The report states that the F-16s only won when they stayed above 100 knots in a guns-only dogfight with no missiles. This scared the US so much that they jump-started development of not one, but two missiles to match the R-73, the AIM-9X and the AIM-132 ASRAAM, along with various helmet targeting systems to match the HMD targeting capability, including the JHMCS. This is the MiG-29G, and it just so happens to be exactly what I was looking for. It's a MiG-29 with the R-73s and the funny R-27ET, but without the useless dogshit R-77 that causes it to go up in BR. More importantly, it doesn't have the overweight tumor fuel tank of the MiG-29 SMT, so this one still flies a bit more like a plane and less like the fucking space shuttle on re-entry on the first day of February in 2003. At 13.0, it gets down tiers pretty much all day to club the horde of event Tomcats, making this one of the most fun 13.0s I've played recently. It's not broken and overpowered at this BR like the AV-8B, nor is it a gimmicky shitbrick that relies on its missiles like the FA-2 at this BR, or god forbid the aforementioned MiG-29 SMT. Ugh. Instead, it's a perfect equilibrium of what the Fulcrum should be. A lightweight, frontline jack of all trades, yet a master of none. You have no Fox 3s, so you gotta be careful in BVR. But if you utilize basic BVR tactics, you can shit on about 90% of these dumbass F-14 and F-15 players who have no idea what they're doing. You are quite literally the best of both worlds between the MiG-29 Model 912 1BR step below you and the MiG-29 SMT 1BR step above you. The MiG-29G's epic gamer playstyle doesn't revolve around how many circles you can turn before blacking out, or how many missiles you can spam at the enemy team like other planes at this BR. Instead, it devolves to how well you can outsmart your enemy before sticking it right up their culo with either the nastiest R-73 off-bore trick shot, or rearranging their guts with a Mach 5 telephone pole down the throat and head-on, or up the ass in a tail chase for the IR-guided variant. Which is funny because Germany never bought the R-27ER or ET in real life, and should not have them in-game. But that's not the point here. The point is, as long as you don't play like a complete lobotomite, you can clown on the enemy in some of the funniest ways ever. Gone are the days of the other MiG-29s we talked about where you have to pray that your enemy's retarded to be able to do anything. Just like its namesake, the Fulcrum is literally a pivot of German air at this tier. I know, I'm very funny. They added this thing in-game as objectively the single best top-tier jet at the time, being a MiG-29 with a good flight model before the flight model nerf, and R-73s, and R-27ETs on top of that. And even today, a whole year after being supposedly power creeped by Fox 3s and other supposedly better 4th-gen fighters, the MiG-29G is still holding on dearly to the close-range rape fighter playstyle with its low-speed handling and its HMD R-73. This thing was supposedly dead on arrival, according to Reddit, and yet a full year later, even the top-tier jets almost a full BR above it get a run for their money from this thing. And get this, after all the flight model nerfs the MiG-29's got, the MiG-29G is still doing this all from the hospice. My favorite historical joke about the MiG-29G literally wrote itself. The Germans sold 23 of their MiG-29Gs to Poland for a grand total of €1. Adjusted for inflation and converted to US dollars, that's literally less than $2 today. Poland got 23 real-life MiG-29s for literally 3% of the price of a War Thunder premium jet. And as if that wasn't based enough, you get to relive the absolute big dick energy giga chattery of the German MiG-29G pilots today in War Thunder as they slap the cocky blue fortards right back to the hangar with the nastiest and most disrespectful off-bore R-73 backshots known to man. Speaking of blue fortards, just like the last video on the F-16, I completely fried my last two brain cells fighting the hordes of event Tomcats for 2 weeks straight trying to make this video, and coming to the MiG-29G at the end to obliterate them was nothing but a divine relief. If the MiG-29s earlier were merely a tool of destruction against Tomcats, then the MiG-29G is simply a fucking act of God. Or at least it was, before the Fakor spam at the beginning of the match killed him. God is dead. Blood is fuel. The top-tier matchmaker is full of fucking event Tomcats. You see, feasting on the insides of the enemies is the fun part. How easily we ignore the horrible balance of this game when it suits our convenience. So tell me, Wallet Warrior, who saves the weak from the man who saves the weak? It's kill or be killed in this up tier. War is a cruel parent but an effective teacher. Its final lesson is carved deep in my mind, that this game and all its players are retarded to some degree. Free Abrams is a myth. Balanced matchmaker? That's a joke. We are all pawns, controlled by something greater. The snail. Expose someone to anger long enough and they will learn to hate. You use your MiG-29 as a tool, something that saves lives, a means of justice against these tomcats. Exquisite. It spared you the burden of all the lives you've taken, absolved you of guilt when you enjoyed it. That is until the illusion was broken. Don't be ashamed now, it's only nature running its course. They have no choices to make, nothing to answer for, and now, those Event F14 players can die with a clear conscience. Okay, let's spade the MiG-29s now. Luckily, there is barely any, since the 3 early models are all the exact same in the modifications tree, and all of them get the R27R stock except the SMT. For the Soviet 9.13 and the German and Hungarian 912, start with flare chaff to get that oh-so-useful chaff for evading AMRAAMs and Phoenix spam, then get the G-suit and go back to get the R60s. Yes, normal, rear aspect R60s at 12.7 for some fucking reason, easily the single worst missile in this entire BR range, and they are literally a downgrade from your stock R60Ms, but you need them to get the next missile, so we can't skip these things sadly. Next, get the new boosters before moving on to rank 3. Start this rank with the R60M, followed by the R27ER, and then the wings repair. Finally, for rank 4, get the engine, EFS, and the R27T. We left the R27T for last because it's kinda shitter, especially when compared to the R27ER in the same job. For the MiG-29G, it's literally the same as the early MiG-29s, but the missiles are in different spots. Start with flare chaff, then G-suit and new boosters as before, but now for rank 3, get the R73, R27T, and wings repair. Then moving on to rank 4, get the R27ER, R27ET, engine, EFS, and go back and work on whatever. The R27ET is a whole new world compared to the base R27T, since it has much more speed and range. It's hilarious firing it from like, I don't know, 14 kilometers away in a tail chase at someone, and watching them try to outrun it. It's really funny, and I recommend you get it. Finally, for the MiG-29 SMT, you get R73s and 2 R77 stock. Sadly, this means you need to research your R27R, unlike the previous MiGs. Start with flare chaff, then the R27R, then rank 2, the G-suit and the R27T. Then rank 3, the UV5-08 external countermeasures pod, which almost doubles your flare and chaff amount. Top gear, top tip! Run flares only in the external pod and chaff only in the internal dispensers. This is because the external pod gets large caliber countermeasures, meaning the flares are more effective than the small caliber ones on the internal dispensers. Anyways, after that get R73 and R27ET, before moving on to get the R27ER, R77, engine, EFS, and going back to work on whatever you want. Congratulations! That is the MiG-29 family in War Thunder spaded and ready to rumble now. And there you have it! That is the MiG-29 family in War Thunder as of the Dance of Dragons update. I can't wait for Gaijin to add a MiG-29M or a MiG-29S after a year of not adding any MiG-29s since I finally finished this video. Which, if this happens, I'll just make an update of this video next year again. And until that shit happens, I'm gonna be doing the third and last remake before going back to covering new planes. and this will be a remake of the Mirage 2000 video, so until that happens, go out there, don't crash on takeoff, and go show the Blue 4 players what your funny, spinny missile can do. See ya next time.